Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild Death, the show where we talk about all the ways a person could wind up joining their ancestors in the Old West. Each week, we spin the wagon wheel of untimely demise, and whatever manner of death it lands on, we tell you a story about it. My name is Jack James Busa.
I'm Susan Busa-Leshner.
And I'm Leslie Sadali.
Here we are yet again.
It's early morning.
Yeah.
Good to see you both.
Yeah.
Very early.
We're all not quite awake.
No, I mean, it's interesting. We do these remotely, as we said. I don't know where this episode is going to fall in line with all the other episodes coming out, but I'm not sure if I mentioned I work very late into the wee hours of the morning, and nothing gets me out of bed quite like a story about death in the Old West. It's the new Folgers.
Okay. All right.
If you say so.
Yeah, let's get started and let's do it.
All right.
Yes.
Leslie, would you mind spinning the wagon wheel of untimely demise?
I'd love to, Jack. Here we go. Spinning that wheel.
Your arms look great after years of spinning.
Okay. It looks like we have death by entertaining.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go.
Guess what?
Well,
I have a story for this.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Let me just say, before we start, I have a story, and yes, it's set in Texas again.
Okay.
All right, so I've got other stories coming up that are not set in Texas, but yet Texas seems to be a hotbed for crazy death.
Stupidity.
That's how it always is.
Here we go. March 1884 in the small East Texas town of Corsicana. It's trade day, and a crowd is gathered on Beaton Street to celebrate the opening of a brand new Dry Goods Emporium. There's music and refreshments and a sense of anticipation because a rope has been stretched high above the crowd from one side of the street to the other for the big event of the day, a tightrope walker. But this tightrope walker won't simply balance his way across the street on a rope. Instead, he'll become a mystery that will take more than a century to solve. This is the story of the rope walker.
Oh. Corsicana he do it, or Corsican't he?
Okie dokie. So let's set the stage. Corsicana is located on Interstate 45, about 50 or so miles northeast of Waco. Now today, Corsicana is famous for the Collins Street Bakery and its delicious fruitcake. However, the town was founded in 1848 to be the county seat for the newly created Navarro County. It was an agricultural community, mostly growing cotton, and no surprise here, it supported the Confederacy during the American Civil War. And as a lot of towns did, Corsicana went through a downturn, an economic downturn during Reconstruction. But in 1871, the completion of the Houston and Texas Central Railroad brought new settlers, new merchants, and a new wave of prosperity. But despite this economic upturn, there were plenty of war veterans who were still trying to scrape together a living. And one of them was the main attraction of the day, a former circus performer who specialized in tightrope walking. He'd recently wowed the crowd in Fort Worth and Dallas, passing the hat after his show to make a living. And today in Corsicana, as the rope walker prepared to climb up to start his act, he had every expectation that this performance would be no different. The fundamental challenge of tightrope walking is to keep one's balance while walking along a tensioned or tight rope between 2 points. The performer must keep most of their weight directly above their support base as they move along the rope. Now, to explain what this means, imagine that you're standing on the ground. Now, your legs are side by side, which creates two pillars of support, almost like the foundation of a house, and your body weight is more or less stable. It's centered stably over this base. But to move along the rope, the tightrope walker has to have their feet one behind the other. So this is where the challenge lies. Keeping the body weight centered while moving along the rope, all the while being careful not to twist the rope or cause it to sway. Once a tightrope walker masters these basic skills, they might add elements to the performances to make it even more exciting. Some performers will dance, and others might juggle or employ props, like a bicycle. Okay, so back to this March day in 1884. It's festive on Beaton Street. There's a happy crowd, there's music, and even the mayor of Corsicana is there to celebrate the grand opening of the Myers and Henning Dry Goods Emporium. The store's slogan was, "The biggest shovels to the biggest bodices, we have it."
What?
Oh my God.
Shovels to bodices. That's
Give
all.
the
got it.
people what they want.
They'd advertised the rope walker's performance as a, quote, astounding, astonishing, amazing, unbelievable, never seen before or ever again act of strength, gravity, and defiance of common sense, end quote.
Yes.
Which it certainly was.
At least they have a
Absolutely.
sense of humor.
Well, they are not lying. That's truth in advertisement. So, this rope is hung high across Beaton Street and pulled until it was tight enough so the rope walker could make his way across it. And then he climbed up. And all of this is standard for a tightrope walking performance. But a few things made this particular performance unique. First of all, the rope walker was going to do his walk with a cast iron stove strapped to his back.
A stove?
Yeah, a cast iron stove. Now, a small cast iron stove weighs about 300 pounds.
Yeah, what?
But the rope walker joked that he might stop to make pancakes during his walk.
Okay. I love this guy.
Second, the rope walker only had one leg. His other had been amputated and replaced with a wooden peg leg.
What?
Speechless.
However, the peg leg did have a notch cut out on the bottom so it could slide along the rope.
Well, that's really
Okay.
smart. How? Okay. Is it a real cast iron stove or is it a prop one?
Real cast iron stove.
Okay,
Real
so
peg leg.
what's this guy's name?
Rope walker.
Okay, peg leg rope rock walker guy. Okay. Let me hear how it unfolds. Sorry.
Okay.
So that's some kind of a rope that will support all of that weight.
Yes, but I don't know if it was a steel or anything like that. It just says rope. But they have to have it tight enough. Okay, so this is the deal, okay? So he climbs up. At the top, a few helpers strap the cast iron stove onto his back. And then the rope walker slid his peg leg onto the rope, adjusted the cast iron stove on his back, and started his journey. Now, you guys are quiet, so this goes with what I'm thinking. I like to imagine that the music died down and a hush fell on the crowd as they craned their necks to look up as the rope walker slowly moved above their heads. He reached the 1/3 mark, and by some accounts, he was laughing and joking with the crowd. So far, so good. He slid a little further. And then, when he reached the middle, for some reason, the rope suddenly went slack.
Wait. Not to be a complete idiot. What is slack?
It's not tight, it's the opposite of tight.
Okay, so he has a 300-pound oven with him. Weirdly enough, the peg leg is fine. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. That's fine. I can understand that. The 300-pound oven, and the rope starts to go slack, I'm gonna guess it might just possibly be the 300 pounds of iron that is strapped to peg leg rope walker.
It doesn't say why. It just said it lost its tension.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna go ahead
I don't
and
know
say
that the stove caused that to continue.
All right.
So the rope went slack. Now, in 1936, the local newspaper interviewed a woman named Rachel May London, who was an eyewitness to the event as a girl. Her account was part of an article in the February 25th, 1936 edition of the Corsican Daily Sun newspaper. And this is what the article had to say. Quote, as the rope walker reached the middle of the street intersection, sliding his notched wooden leg along the rope and cautiously pulling the other after, he became overbalanced and fell to the ground, landing on his front sides with the stove crushing on top of his body. Women and children screamed and fainted. Some of the older men surged forward to where the man had fallen. Some fathers and brothers took their daughters and sisters inside nearby stores for protection and then joined to where the other men were to give what assistance they could. The rope walker, the man, was taken to the Malloy Hotel around the corner. Dr. Gulick was summoned and performed what first aid treatment was available at that time. The broken man told some of the bedside attendants that he was a member of the Methodist Church and asked for a minister of that denomination. Reverend Abe Mulkey came and talked for some time to the man. Later in the evening, Dr. Gulick reported that the man was dying and that he wanted to talk to a, quote, Jew man, end quote. Mr. Simon, owner of one of the stores, was summoned and with the dying man repeated the Jewish prayers in Hebrew. The rope walker told Mr. Simon that he had been joking when he said he was a Methodist, but really was an Orthodox Jew. I don't know why that makes me laugh. He was joking that he was a Methodist, but he
What
really
an
was an
odd
Orthodox.
joke.
He's like,
I
I was
know.
kidding, obviously. You idiots.
I'm having a blast watching Jack's face through all of this. The facial expression.
I don't know. This guy sounds crazy. First of all, he's crushed. He fell off of the tightrope and is crushed by this brilliant idea to lug an oven with his peg leg across the tightrope. He gets crushed to death by it. He's in the hospital and makes this weird joke about being a Methodist when really he's an Orthodox Jew. He's like, I was kidding about being a Methodist. And the guys around them are like, it was so funny, we forgot to laugh.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, so to continue with the article, the rope walker told Mr. Simon that he had been joking when he said he was a Methodist, but really was an Orthodox Jew, which was proven to Mr. Simon's satisfaction as he repeated his prayers in Hebrew. During his several interviews, he, the rope walker, refused to divulge his name or residence or any information concerning his identity, end quote.
Except that he was not a Methodist. Okay.
And that's it. That's all.
That's all you
So, the rope walker's body was buried in the Hebrew cemetery in Corsicana. And, as no one knew his name, a small marble headstone with the words rope walker was placed above the grave. And that seemed to be the end of it for many years.
Oh,
The whole thing is just, wow. But they were so nice to him. You can go to Corsicana now and you could go to the cemetery. And you could see that if you so desire.
Can you go to the shovel store? What was it?
I don't think that's there anymore.
Yeah, I bet they were like, damn.
Went like a bad luck on their opening day.
It's now
All
called
right.
J.C. Penney's.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So it was the end of it for many years, but that 1936 article brought the event back up. Then 20 years later, Texas writer Frank X. Tolbert, he wrote about the mysterious rope walker in several articles published in the Dallas Morning News. So I think he wrote his first article about 1958, and for the next 20 or so years, he would every once in a while write an article about it. But much more recently, Massachusetts genealogist and writer Jim Yerin, and I hope I'm saying his name right, became intrigued by the story. So he did some research of old newspapers and documents, and in 2020 published a book titled Rope Walker, a Texas Jewish History Mystery, which finally revealed the identity of the mysterious rope walker. According to Yaron, the rope walker was born in the Alsace region of France about 1845, and as a performer went by the names Daniel DeHoon, Joseph Berg, Moses Berg, or Professor Berg, and I think there's a few others. Before immigrating to the United States, he had performed with a German circus for more than a decade. So I got curious and I looked up the name Moses Berg, and there's this website called the Chappelle Manuscript Foundation, which is very interesting. And there was his name. So according to the information, his real name probably was Moses Berg. Now, after he was in the United States, he tried to enlist in the regular army sometime between 1857 and 1860, but he was pulled out by his mother for being underage. He volunteered on November 28, 1861, and he was wounded in a battle on December 24, 1862, at Middleburg, Tennessee. His leg was fractured by a 2-pound cannonball, and as a result, his lower leg was amputated between the knee and the ankle, and he was fitted with his peg leg. I think the way the Civil War handled things was, if it gets shot, cut it off. He was honorably discharged, and it appears that he returned to making his living as a traveling performer.
It's a natural progression.
Well, it's interesting to me that, if he's training the circus, there's a lot of things I guess he could have done, juggling or something like that. But you gotta admit, a one-legged tightrope walker.
I would book him for something now. I would book him for an event. That sounds amazing. A peg-legged tightrope walker. Yeah.
Just by itself, that's enough for me. But let's add some things.
He can definitely do the opening of my shovel store anytime. Leave the cast iron oven at home, but you're booked. So grab your peg leg and get over here.
I'm not sure this makes a difference, but I'm just curious. Do we know how far off of the ground the tightrope was?
Enough to where if you fell and a cast iron stove fell on top of you, it would kill you. Well, he wasn't like the World Trade Center, that guy that did that rope walk. For him to be a big mystery, I think is kind of funny after all these years, because the fact is, when this guy Yaron was looking around, he found newspaper articles in Fort Worth and Dallas saying this guy's name. One of the articles that I read was crazy. It said that he did it, and he had the cast iron stove on his back, and that he actually made pancakes, and that they swung the rope back and forth with himself on it, and all this kind of stuff. So this guy's identity wasn't necessarily a secret.
Wait, there are articles saying that he was he did it, and he was.
Yeah, he had just recently, very recently, performed in Fort Worth and Dallas.
I think it's interesting how he made pancakes with the stove behind him.
Right, but I don't know if it's actually true. It's like hyperbole.
Okay.
He swung it back and forth and all this kind of stuff. This is the same time period as some other nonsense that was going on in Fort Worth in particular. The episode Duel in the Street.
Yeah.
So I wonder if those people were in the audience looking at him.
Probably.
All the prostitutes came out and go, what the hell is this guy doing? That's the other thing, though. Think about it. There are a lot of men after the Civil War who were not able-bodied anymore.
Most of them didn't have circus training to fall back on. So.
Well, still,
Hard
imagine
times.
that he has to travel around. And this may be a reason why he didn't admit what his name was. I don't know. But not only was he this performer, but he had a very active romantic life as well. Now, according to the genealogy notes on the Chappelle Manuscript Foundation site, this is what they had to say. Now, the soldier is referring to Moses Berg. That's his name. That's the rope walker's name. So the soldier was married at least 3 times. Per deposition, the soldier was married to Christine Hageman on August 8th, 1863, by a squire in New Albany, Indiana. The soldier left Christine in 1866, and Christine divorced him in 1869. Per deposition, the soldier was then married to Augusta Hayman Brenner, sometimes known as Caroline, on October 7th, 1876, by Reverend G. Scheibel in New York. It was determined that Augusta and the soldier were never legally married. Per a marriage certificate, the soldier was then married to a Sarah Berg, who I guess her maiden name was Hexter or something like that, on April 10th, 1881, by Rabbi Abraham Wormser in New York, New York. And the special examiners stated in their reports that Berg was hard to follow, meaning they couldn't keep track of him, because he was a one-legged tightrope walker and often used aliases or stage names like Daniel, Dan, Professor Terhune, etc. There is much modern confusion about the date and circumstances of the soldier's death. Per a letter, the soldier died March 13th, 1883 in Navarro County, Texas, and also per an affidavit, the soldier fell from the tightrope on March 6th, 1883, then died when his right leg was amputated on March 13th, 1883. So,
Wait,
depending on the
I'm having
account,
some modern confusion.
yeah,
He fell off the tightrope. He was crushed by the thing. The rabbi is there. Then he had to have his other leg amputated?
the way the article makes it sound is like this all happened in one day. According to the documentation, he fell on the 6th and lingered until the 13th. And he also had to have his leg amputated, and
His
then he
other
passed
leg
away.
amputated.
His other leg, yeah.
Damn, Moses.
So, depending on the account, Berg may have lived for nearly 10 days after his fall and had his other leg amputated, which is just brutal. Yeah.
Moses. And he sounds like a swell guy.
Well, I don't know. He kind of disappeared on his wives. To say that he was a hard guy to follow means sometimes they didn't know where he was.
Well, it's not like he was that fast or anything. Jeez.
Nevertheless, if you take a train and you go from New York City out to Texas, you're kind of hard to follow. But anyway, he had done this several times successfully, and that day in March 1884 just was not his day.
Nope. He was distracted.
Definitely
by the
not.
people down the low, by the pancakes, by the excitement surrounding the shovel store. It was all too much for Moses.
His final request was to, quote, be buried with my people, end quote. And he was. That was a really nice thing they did. So it turns out that no matter how far or how high he traveled, at the end, the rope walker finally landed in the right place.
Oh, no.
Aww.
Okay, if you would like to know more about this story, please check out the links in our show notes and follow us on social media at The Wild Wild Death.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Adios, muchachos and rope walkers alike.
The Wild Wild Death is a production of 2222 Media.